Hello and welcome back to the second video covering the FA Women's National League within the new Football Manager game FM26. Remember the video from a couple of days ago where we simmed ahead a few years in the FAWNL to see what happened. Well, I have now gone a little bit further than that. We are 20 years into the future, and basically I kept going until a current FAWNL side reached the promised land of the Women's Super League. So that is what we're going to be looking at today. I've made a note of all the teams who have moved about, where they are now. I've had a look at FA Cup runs as well to see FAWNL sides getting the furthest in the FA Cup. I put a poll out on my social media earlier on this week asking you, do you think it's going to be Gwalior United, Lewes, Cheltenham Town or Plymouth Argyle who were the first team to make it to the Super League? And I have led you on a little bit of a wild goose chase. If we go and have a look at the Women's Super League, you will see that this season, for the 45-46 season, Gwalior United are in the WSL at the end of 2045. However, that isn't actually the first WNL side to make it into the WSL. If we go back a couple of seasons, they only made 1 year, but in 42-43, Lewes got themselves promoted from WSL 2, and for the 42-43 season, they were in the Women's Super League. They finished bottom. They had 1 win, 1 draw, 24 losses in their 26 games for 4 points. They finished 13 points away from safety. But they were the first side from the FAWNL to get into the Women's Super League. Now, having gone through 20 years of this simulation now, there are a few things that I have noticed within the women's pyramid that are not quite right. Firstly, with this WSL2, you'll notice if I go through the seasons that it changes somewhat, and that is because if we go to WSL2, WSL2 keeps alternating. You'll see here that there are champions and then a playoff. You go back a year, there's no playoff. Then you go back even further, and then there's 2 promotions in that season. That's how Lewes got up on goal difference over Southampton. Then there's some more promotions. Then it disappears again. And then you go back. Then it's back again. Then it disappears again. Then it's back again. Then it disappears again. Gwalior finishing 3rd that year. Lewes finishing 2nd the year before. So it keeps changing. There isn't the consistency, which I think is what has caused a lot of, when we looked at the last video, the changes in the promotion and relegations from the FAWNL, and it's a little bit off. The other thing that is slightly off, if we look at some teams, let's start with London Bees, is one that I remember initially coming in. They seem to only exist to play in the English Women's League Cup. That's the only place they seem to be playing. And then if they don't get into the WSL2, then they don't take part in the League Cup. It's slightly weird. Queen's Park Rangers are another one like that. So it's very buggy, the women's side of things at the moment. The other thing as well, this is with 2 teams, with Fulham and with Doncaster Rovers Bells, is that the bio seems to still think they play in the Super League. And that is all they have done throughout the entire time, even though they haven't been in the Super League. Same with Doncaster Rovers Bells. So again, there's quite a few bugs in there at the moment. As I said, some teams decide to they just seem to exist in the League Cup. Some only seem to exist in the FA Cup. But 20 years down the line, we have had quite a few movements, and there are some very interesting moves, shall we say, particularly more around geography than it is around anything else. Let's start going through the current Northern Premier Division teams. Rugby Borough. Rugby Borough are in National Premier South. Another side in the Southern Premier Division, West Bromwich Albion, they have moved to Women's National Premier South. Now, this one is the really, I think, interesting one. We're going to go to Halifax. Halifax, you think, oh, they're going to be in maybe Division 1 North. Oh, no. Halifax are in Division 1 Southwest. Quite how Halifax are in Division 1 Southwest, I don't know. But there we go. Halifax in Division 1 Southwest. Sporting Cowser, I won't go through absolutely every single one of these. Sporting Cowser, they are in Division 1 Midlands. Now, as had happened at the 5-year one, Rail Bedford are in Division 1 Midlands. Other sides, we're going to stick within the FAWNL for now. Huddersfield of Division 1 North, they got themselves promoted. They are in the Northern Premier Division, as are Blackburn Rovers, as they were at the end of the 5-year simulation that I did. Also sticking where they are, Boldmere St Michael's, they are still in the Southern Premier Division. Kidderminster Harriers, they did come back into the FAWNL for a bit. They've dropped out again as they had at the end of the 5-year one, as have Sutton United. Now, Notts County, they're an interesting one as well. Notts County have got themselves promoted. They're into Tier 3, but in the Southern Premier Division as well. There are lots of teams from the south, and you'll see a little bit later on why so many teams seem to have gone from the north to the south. Elsewhere, so Sutton Coldfield Town relegated out as well. Now, this is another interesting one. You will really like this as well. Just like Halifax, who have gone into Division 1 Southwest, Bristol Rovers are in the Northern Premier Division. So how the geography is going on like this, I do not know. But Bristol Rovers are in the north. Halifax are in southwest. What else have we got? So from the WSL 2 down into the National League are Durham Sestra, who are in the Northern Premier Division, and Portsmouth are in the Southern Premier Division. That makes sense. From the Super League, current Super League teams, London City Lionesses, Brighton and Hove Albion and Everton have all dropped down to WSL 2. But let's have a look at WSL 2, because there are quite a few teams currently in the FAWNL that have made their way into WSL 2. Cambridge United are one, Cheltenham Town, #United, Lewes, Plymouth are in WSL 2 at the moment. So a lot of movements there. And then if we go to the WSL, you will see Gwalior United are in the WSL. Last season in WSL 2, Gwalior United, did they win or did they get promoted and the playoff? They won the league by a point over Southampton. 11 wins, 7 draws, 4 losses for 40 points over Southampton. Brighton third, Lewes fourth, and Charlton Athletic there relegated into the what I presume is the Southern Premier Division. Charlton Athletic currently playing in the Women's FA Cup. This is what I mean. They're not seeming to get relegated into North or South. Some of them, they seem to get relegated out of WSL2 and then just only seem to play in the FA Cup, which is a strange one. Other teams, to say Loughborough there, they were in WSL2, they went back down. Ipswich have gone down, but then eventually they got themselves back up again. And there seems to be quite a bit of yo-yoing as well. So at the moment, the game, when a WSL2 team gets relegated, they seem to tend to bounce back, and that's how the game is kind of having its own balance. There's the year that Lewis got promoted into the Super League, with Charlton going down again. Plymouth had come up to WSL2 and then went back down. Watford had come up and then went back down. Then there's Charlton again, coming up and going back down. But here, look, you've got Bournemouth, Loughborough, Lewis, Gwalior. So there's plenty of teams getting up there. And of course, once a team does get into WSL2, they become available and you can start managing them. So if you have an FA Women's National League team that you really want to manage, you can just sim and hope that they get through into WSL2, and then you can start managing them and hopefully lead them to glory. The editor comes out when the game comes out on the 4th of November. Once that happens, I do intend to make the FAWNL properly, because I have done some alterations to leagues before in Football Manager, so I know a bit about what I'm doing. I'm going to make all the logos work, and I can run some simulations. I've discovered that the best way to work this out is I can move in the pre-game editor before your game starts all of like the Northern Premier Division teams into the Super League, all of the Southern Premier Division teams into WSL2. Then you can sim a season and it will actually sim all their fixtures. So might do that once the actual game comes out. But then we can make the FAWNL properly kind of in the game and make all these kind of bugs that we're spotting work properly. Let's have a look at the FA Cup, because Women's FA Cup, we've had a number of teams get through to the quarter-finals, and we've had one team make the semi-final. So if we go to Women's FA Cup, which you have to just search FA Cup, then go competitions and awards and women. Now, the furthest, as I said, that a FAWNL side has got is the semi-finals. But here you see season 2044-2045, Billericay Town losing to Manchester United in the quarter-finals of the FA Cup. We go back a little bit further. You see as teams start to really get their way through. Notts County, 43-44 season, they make it to the quarter-finals. In the 41-42 season, Hull City lose to Arsenal in the quarter-finals. Hull also, coincidentally, make the quarter-finals in the 35-36 season. Just have a quick look at that for Hull City fans. You'll see that they lost to Everton in the quarterfinals in 35-36. Elsewhere, 40-41 season, it's Plymouth Argyle. They lose to Manchester City in the quarterfinals. The year before, United, they lose to Chelsea in the quarterfinals. And then elsewhere in the quarterfinals, we've got Lewis in season 36-37. That's where they lose 3-1 to Arsenal. They also make the quarterfinals in 32-33, where they lose to Chelsea. Equally in that 32-33 season, Abingdon United make the quarterfinals of the FA Cup in, what is that, 7 years' time? So Abingdon United fans, you've got a lot to look forward to there, getting through to the last 8 of the Women's FA Cup. There's 2 quarterfinals for Cheltenham Town. They get there in 34-35. Where they lose to Chelsea. They also get there, Cheltenham Town fans, in 29-30, where you lose to Chelsea by 3-0. Gwalior United also get to the quarterfinals. They lose to Manchester City by 2-0. So that is, according to Football Manager, the earliest that an FAWNL side will make it to the quarter-finals of the Women's FA Cup. So that's not that far away. We've got plenty to look forward to there. And then we have one semi-final appearance in the next 20 years for a current FAWNL side. It comes in the 37-38 season, and it comes in the semi-finals to Gwalior United, who lose 3-1 to Manchester City. Incidentally, going on, it's a Man City Arsenal final and Manchester City win it. But in the semi-finals of the 37-38 Women's FA Cup, Gwalior United make it. Now, at that point, of course, it says they're currently a WSL side, which they are. They weren't at the time. which is another kind of thing. It goes on what they are now, not what they were at the time. But yeah, 37-38 season, Gwalior United are in the semi-finals of the Women's FA Cup. Yeah, just confirming that there, that Gwalior United were in WSL2, finished 7th that season in WSL2 when they made the semi-finals of the FA Cup. There's also plenty of interest around in terms of kind of manager swaps and that sort of thing. I've had a look at some. Obviously, there's some managers that don't exist. Some do. Some disappear off the face of the earth once they retire. There have, though, been off the pitch some very interesting kind of moves. Not only, it seems to centre around Halifax, it really does. Not only are Halifax now for some reason playing in Division 1 Southwest, this is Manchester United's women's page. Have a look at their manager. It's Mr. Rob Mitchell, Manchester United women's manager. If we have a look at his staff history, he leaves Halifax in 2032, has a season at Gwalior, couple of seasons at Newcastle, and is currently in his nearly 10th year at Manchester United. He's been there for 9 years, 183 days. He's had 115 wins, 61 draws, 125 losses in the last 10 years from 2035. It says no promotions, no relegations, no major honours, no major cup honours. Did have a look at that. There is a runners-up medal in the FA Cup in those 9 years, 183 days. But yeah, if you're Rob Mitchell, it looks like you've got quite a good managerial career ahead of you. There's plenty others around as well for people that exist. There's players that have gone on to become goalkeeping coaches. I was having a look and see, as many people will know, Nottingham Forest are my team. Nottingham Forest in the future become managed by a player who's currently playing for Millwall Lionesses in Tier 5. So there's loads going on, and there's lots to unpick. I can even go further into the future if you want. Do let me know down in the comments. If you do want as well to know what happens to your team, or if you're a player or a manager or a member of staff in your career, then do let me know, and I'll have a look at what happens to you throughout the next 20 years of the women's football game, because, as I said, you get some crazy scenarios in Football Manager, like #United going to Division 1 Southwest. Who would have ever thought that? But I've been Chris Gadsby. Don't forget, the Women's Football Chat show is back on Friday this week because of those games midweek, and on Thursday, so it will be a day later. And congratulations once again to Gwalior, not only making the Super League, and Lewis, of course, making the Super League, but also the semi-finals of the Women's FA Cup. Bye for now. Just as a side note to finish off, Gwalior United don't survive. They get close, within 3 points of surviving, but they drop down to WSL2 again. Maybe I'll keep going into the future and see how long it takes for a current FAWNL side to survive in the Women's Super League.